Happy Monday, everyone. We are back again. It is currently 11:42 and 67 degrees here today in the Love State. And we are here to bring you another podcast. This is Seth Moore coming to you again here on Anchor by Spotify. We have some things that we're going to talk about today. I really didn't know whether or not I was going to do a podcast. I was kind of in between some other work, and so I didn't actually know whether or not I was going to do it. But I thought that it would be, it would be advantageous for me to do this because, as I always say, there's so much going on in the world, and I'm sure a lot of you are, whether or not totally or sparsely, you're keeping up with what's going on. And there's things that are probably coming across, your desk or your TV or, as you peruse on your phone every day, you see things that are happening. And particularly, because I said before that the continent is the last frontier. And so we're going to be talking about some things today, and I'm probably going to be moving around in regards to the information. But if I don't give all of it to you, as I always do, I'll always, of course, come back and do a follow-up, and and we'll continue that way so that you get the information. Okay, so but before we get started, I just want to mention a few things, and then we'll, of course, go in to the podcast. As you all probably are aware of, there is a great push in the continent now because there have been many coups that have taken place, many coups d'etats that have taken place. And usually they're done by the U.S. or the European nations for their own benefit. Okay, and I want you to be really clear on what I'm saying. Because to keep a country or a continent and its economy destabilized, you have to have those pieces in place to do that. Because this is a chess game, okay? It's a chess game. It's not checkers, it's chess. Okay, so it's a thinking man's game. And obviously, if you've been keeping up, the West and France, for the better part of the last month or so, they've been put in checkmate. Okay, now there's information that France has left Burkina Faso, but we'll keep you updated as to whether or not that is solid information, because we know of date that they are not in Mali. They've been kicked out by the Malian people, and they've been kicked out of Burkina Faso. Okay, if I'm saying this right. Now it's Niger where they've been having a problem. Okay, because those strongholds that have been in place, and in the Sahel region, that they've been having this really pushback because of these puppet presidents that have been put in place to keep the economy, and the people destabilized, where there's only a small portion of people benefiting. And that has been the president and his family, who were just ousted, Ali Bongo, out of the region, okay? Because they were totally in the pocket of the West and France. Okay, and so his family had ruled the country for like 56 years. And his father was a sellout, okay, to the French. And so, of course, the son, when he got in office, he he basically resumed the same type of administration. Enrich yourself, enrich your family, and allow France to just exploit the nation and its resources, which they have done. But now that he's out of office, there is a revolution that's taken place in the continent. We've had, within the last year or so, we've had like 4 coups. They call them coups. Some other people may call them realignment, as I heard the former ambassador of the U.S. call it. It's a realignment, which I agree. It's a realignment of putting things in place that should have been in place long ago. Okay, so now, what is the motivation of the West? What is the motivation of France? And what has been the motivation of all these European countries that have been in the continent for eons? Okay, so you have to pay attention to the language when you hear certain things on the news. Now, they'll call it a coup. See, because that's what they're accustomed to doing. So the U.S. will come in and they'll have a coup to destabilize the country and to keep, their puppet in place so that they can come in and of course do what they've been doing. Extract the resources and then turn around and try to sell them back to the continent for exorbitant prices. Think about that. Sell your resources now, right? Give you loans on your own money, which they've done. And then they have these exorbitant interest rates. They have something in France that was called first right of well, basically what it means, let me put it this way. Basically what it means is that we take your resources. We have the rights to your resources more than you do. These are the kind of deals that were made 50, 60 years ago when Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and all these countries that were under French rule that were made. And it was basically neo-colonialism, saying that we take the chains off, but we still control your economies. We still control your currency. And then when you want to use your currency, because all your currency was going into French banks, okay, you have to ask us to borrow your money. Think about this now. You have to ask us to borrow your money, and then we're going to put exorbitant interest rates on your money. We're going to tell you how much you can get. Just the nerve of these people, okay? So what I want to do, these are the things that have been happening for the longest time, okay? And so now that Africa has there's so much infrastructure that's going on now in the continent that is unreal. I mean, the places are beautiful, beautiful. And you even have an exodus of African American people, if you want to use that term, who are going to the continent and living. Some have come back because they said certain areas are too expensive to live, such as Ghana. And I don't say that to discourage anybody, because soon enough, we will all be back home in the Holy Land, in that region, because that's what it is. Just gorgeous, beautiful places. I mean, that will rival the U.S. But this is what I want to say before we get started. Now, here are the same people, because I was listening to this young lady, and I was listening to this white guy. And this white guy was sending out a clarion call for his friends to go and invest in the continent. Okay, to go and invest in the continent because the continent is fertile ground. And you have many European nations that are investing in the continent because right now, as we speak, there is a city in Lagos they built on an island that's going to call I think it's called Ecker Atlantic City. I mean, it's unreal. They call it the new Dubai. I mean, it's just gorgeous, just and so there's heavy investment in the continent, all around the continent in that regard, in terms of infrastructure and technology and so forth, because you have great minds in the continent as you do here, because we've invented all this stuff. Okay, so you have startup companies that are developing in the continent where they're tech, they're green energy, and so forth and so on. And I was looking at gentlemen who built a company with electric cars, young Africans, tech startups where people have computer companies that are doing fantastic. This one lady who actually studied, who's a billionaire who studied in the U.S., went back and started her own tech company where they were putting what they call marine cables under the water to service certain areas in Africa as far as the internet, so forth and so on, from Portugal to Lagos to Nigeria. Just phenomenal things that are being done. Okay, so this is what I want to say. It's amazing because now we have all of these people all these immigrants, if you want to call them that, who are coming to the U.S. Just recently, Joe Biden allowed over 500,000 Venezuelans to come into the country. And if you are cognizant of the fact that when I did the podcast on the Latin America, whitening of Latin America, that I've done, just a couple of weeks ago, and how this affected the landscape of those regions, and how it was a game to whiten up the area and to come in and to have control over the resources. So same old game, and so this is another move to kind of throw a wedge in for black people. See, because what'll happen is these people will come in like other people, and they'll begin to feel as though they have rights, feel as though that they can subjugate your children, for those of you who have younger children, when it comes to their education, them acquiring, careers and schooling and, jobs and so forth. So it's a game to put that wedge in between so that it can hinder. And some of you might be saying, oh, well, that ain't going to hinder me because my kid's this, my kid's that, my kid's this. Okay. We're not just talking about your kids. See that individual stuff, that's what got us so messed up. It's about the whole group. It's about all of us. It's not just about your kids. Oh, my kids are well because my kids, they go to school over here. Or my kids are abroad. Or my kids are this. Or my kids are that. See, you have that mentality that you have is the very reason why a lot of us as a collective are messed up. Let me move on. But this is the game that's being played. But what they don't tell these people, that America is on its way down. That America's currency probably has 10 years left because the strength is going out of the dollar every day. Is losing its power that it once held. That petrodollar is losing its power. And they're trying to hold on for dear life. Okay? So this is the game. And it's nothing different than's been played before. You know what I'm saying? They might add a different twist of whatever to it, but it's the same old game. Okay? So what I want to say is that Africa for Africans. Africa for Africans. Or a Kebalon for you know what I mean, because that's the original name. But Africans for Africans. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about invaders. I'm not talking about people who come in, because there's a lot of anti-blackness that's going on. As you all know, there's a lot of anti-blackness that's going on, that has been going on for centuries. Okay, so now, do you think that these Arab nations such as Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, what else? Algeria, all of these are areas that were once inhabited by African people, dark people, because the continent is a dark continent. The continent is black. That area is for black folks. Now, these nations that I've just mentioned are those who have been invaded over centuries ago and set up shop. But what I want to say is this. Do you think that these nations are with the darker nations? Do you believe that they're really with the darker part of the continent? Or are they playing the same game that the Westerners are playing? Because and the reason for that, and the reason why I'm saying this, is because there's a lot of anti-blackness, even in a lot of the Arab nations. Now, we're going to read something about the ancient Arabs, because the ancient Arabs were black people. So now you have this acculturation, as I often say, that has been taking place in the continent and other dark regions of the world, because these people know who the original people are. And so this is why you have all this, when people talk about this anti-Semitism and so forth and so on, anti-blackness, and and the reason why black people are treated so bad in a lot of these Arab countries, and they're really not Arab countries. They've just been displaced, okay? The reason for that is because they know that's not their home. That's not your home. That's not originally your home. That is really not originally not your place of origin, okay? And so I want to say to the African leaders too, you have to know that African is for Africans. Africa is for Africans. And all of these regions that are inhabited by these white-looking Arabs, okay, who treat black people very badly. It's been said, it's been documented, it's proof that when darker Africans go to Dubai, they go to other places in these Arab countries, they're treated poorly, and to the point where some of them are used even as slaves, still used as slaves. And so what I'm saying is that there's a lot of consternation amongst these these Arab nations now. If you actually pay attention, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, they have a lot going. And I believe this is by the providence of the Creator, because Africa is going to be for Africans. Make no mistake about it. So what I wanted to get back to my point, when I was talking about this gentleman who's making this clarion call for his friends to come to Africa, invest in Africa now, invest in Africa. Now, and because the U.S. is in a downward spiral, okay, and there's revolution that's going on in the continent, and there's massive infrastructure, there's massive things that are taking place. And I said the continent is the new frontier. Make no mistake about it. All roads lead back to the continent because it's the richest continent on the planet. And with Russia and China backing them, it's a good thing. But that's another story too, because there may be some holes in that as well. But we won't talk about that right now. And what I wanted to say that with all the racism that has taken place in this country, Jim Crow, redlining, lynching, in the early 1900s, the Red Summer, where they've destroyed many wealthy black communities, soldiers coming home from war, mobs killing soldiers, and, you go off and fight for the country, and then you come back to face the fact that you can't get a GI Bill, but they were setting up white families and giving them, land grants and setting up suburban neighborhoods for these poor peasants who came to the U.S. during, the early 20th century when they were coming from Ellis Island, come from Scotland, Ireland, Italy, Poland, Germany, you name it. They were coming in. They were a welfare case because they didn't have anything. And so the government of this country set them up. And at the same time, the indigenous people were being trampled on, lynched, redlined, wealthy black communities burnt to the ground, And here it is now. Think about this. Here it is now. You want to make a clarion call to your white friends to telling them to go to the very Africa that you call monkeys in the jungle, and undeveloped, but now you want to go and invest. And I want to say to African leaders, I want to say to African people, like we say in the hood, and we said growing up, all money ain't good money. You need to turn these people away. You need to turn as many of them away as you can. Because imagine if you allow all of these people to own businesses in the continent, what you think is going to happen? What you think is going to happen? If you get a plethora of white business people, owning or owning vast real estate in the continent, what you think is going to happen? Come on, y'all. You gotta look at the history. You gotta look at the history of these people. And yeah, of course, all white people are not bad. But the majority, you gotta look at the history. You have to look at the history. And the very people, because they know that the U.S. is on a downward spiral, they know there's a huge decline in this economy, and it's coming, that this economy is going to be nothing. It's going to be nothing. Now, what they want to do, they want to run to the continent now and set up shop. Think about how unfair that is. A lot of you, I know, have different opinions. You're entitled to that. You want to run to the continent now to set up shop, while you basically you destroyed America. You destroyed America by trying to keep your foot on people's necks for the last 400 years of our people in this country. So now you want to make the continent your new place to set up shop and to plant your feet. The nerve of you. You are the children of the lynchers, the exploiters, and all of these people. But now you want to go to the continent and you want to send out a clarion call to all your friends. Oh man, the continent is great because you know what? The U.S. dollar, and you compare their dollars and the way they build their homes over there. This is what this guy was saying. The way they build their homes over there are greater than the way they do them here, because Our houses are just made of wood over here, and over there they're building their houses with bricks and stones and oh, but we were uncivilized. Remember that? We were the uncivilized people. Remember? Who was really uncivilized? You know? And how you railed on the continent so pejoratively about, you know, the monkeys and they this and they that and they uneducated. We taught the world everything it knows. You know this. We brought religion to the world. We brought science. We brought mathematics. We brought astronomy. We brought the 7 liberal arts. We brought culinary. We brought it all. But now you want to run to the continent. And there are many people, palm-colored people, who are living on the continent right now. It's a paradise. But then they'll get in the news and they'll try to make you think it's a bad place to go. These people are wicked, man. But anyway, so we're gonna. I wanted to bring that to your attention, and just kind of like say some things concerning that. Okay, so we're gonna be talking the original blacks, African Arabs of Arabia. Okay, and the reason why I'm saying this is because we have all these countries now that are going to be investing. And so it is my prayer that the owners will, because there are a lot of black owners, that the Africa will be for the Africans. And so I said, with all of these Arab people from this place, Lebanon and Syria, who are coming to invest in the continent, you don't think that a lot of these people are going to be trying to bring their people over? Think about this. Okay, we're going to move on. If one understood Arab culture, it is immediately apparent that blackness is highly cherished conceptually, and in reality, in Arab culture, the best camel is the black one. The best fig is the blackest. The best eyes are black. The best olives are black. The most beautiful rock is the black Kaaba. Any Bedouin Arab that is asked his color would undoubtedly respond Asma or Aswad, which means black, brown. No Arab ever describes himself as Badin, which means white. Who are the Arabs? In today's world, one is seductively led by the racist Western media to believe that the Arabs of Arabia and Africa represent a peculiar phenotype, with all other non-conforming types being somewhat alien to that concept. In this way, they impose a certain Central Asian phenotype as the racial Arab and the almost ubiquitous black Arabs of the modern times as either descendants of slaves or immigrants. In this way, they attempt to disconnect the lineage or the linkage between the ancient Cushitic black Arabs globally celebrated in antiquity, now reclassified as some Caucasoid, Semitics, and their Cushite or Cushitic African roots. The article is therefore another blow against the citadel of falsehood erected by the Western intelligentsia, used to discourage, disempower, dissipate, and diffuse the energy of the black nation. Again, one notes and deplores the unrelenting effort by non-continental peoples to appropriate the history and the achievements of brilliant black African luminaries as their own. And this has been going on forever. I mean, it's nothing new. It's nothing new. You know, and so I say this because I truly don't believe I truly don't believe that those Arabs, the others, are really friends of the original Arabs because they know the history. They know the history. They know the history. So why is it that they will come into the continent, and even those who are already there, who are running countries, would be with the Africans who are building and so forth. Okay, let's move on. Much confusion attends the word Arabs because it has not always been used with rigorous consistency. Moreover, in the wake of the global dominance of the Arab culture and Islamic political power in the between 7 AD and 14 AD, the number of Arabs increased exponentially by the addition of many non-Arab Arabized people, because acculturation, as I said earlier, acculturation and assimilation were deliberately fostered by state policy. Now look at this. By state policy, y'all. Acculturation and assimilation was fostered by state policy. Case in point, example. They'll never show you when you go to Egypt, right? They'll always show you in Egypt these invaders. You always see the invaders. They'll show you these light Arabs, the invaders, but they'll never take you to Aswan. Okay? They'll never take you to Aswan where all the darker Kemetic people are. Because those are the real, for the lack of a better word, those are the real Egyptians, because Egypt is a Greek word, as I've said many times before. The Kemites didn't even call themselves Egyptians. But they won't take you to Aswan, where they've ousted the people out of the main region of Egypt, and they live on the outskirts in Aswan, where they're dark like you and me. I've seen this. Where they're dark like you and me. Beautiful people. Arabs, I mean, they're Cushitic, and they're Nubian people. Beautiful. Beautiful chocolate skin, woolly curly hair, just beautiful people. But they won't show you that because those are the original inhabitants of Kemet, which they call Egypt. So again, point in case, this acculturation and assimilation was deliberately fostered by the state to move out the original inhabitants of the region of Kemet, so when the world comes, they won't see them. They won't see them. You'll see them sparsely scattered, here and there. But for the most part, you're going to see the invaders who inhabit those regions. So this is why I say what I say. Today, the word Arabs does not strictly imply or designate any known racial category of people. It is an ethnic identification that has several aspects, including logistics, politics, and genealogy. Its meaning is nuanced depending on the particular context, of course. As an ethnic identity, an Arab is someone who considers himself to be an Arab regardless of racial or ethnic origin. This definition encompasses many Africans, Indians, Indonesians, and Chinese who describe themselves as Arabs. See what I'm saying, y'all? Acculturation. Everybody can be an Arab. Chinese, Indonesians, Indians. So everybody, as I've said many times before, everybody wants to be who you are. Because what's attached to that? land, money, resources. All those things are attached to assimilating or acculturating someone else's identity. Same thing that's going on in Israel. Okay? Where people are saying, well, we are the original people of this land. But that ain't what the Creator said. He said, they are they that call themselves, right? According to the book. But they are not. But they are of what? The synagogue of Satan. Usually, the first language, excuse me, persons who claim to be Arab is Arabic. There are over 200 million rather, people worldwide whose first language is Arabic. Again, these people spread over a large portion of the globe, spanning from Central Africa to Central Asia. More than 70% of the so-called Arabs in the world live physically in Africa. Okay? Given that the Arabic language is a Semitic language which forms part of the Afro-Asian language family, which originated in Africa, one can rightly view Arabic as an African language of the official languages of the African Union that include English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. Arabic language is the only Afro-Asiatic language spoken. The rest are Euro-Aryan English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. See, Wichua, Jid, okay, and Meto-Semitic Africa. And of course, you can find that when you do the study. See, but there was a time on the continent where there was nothing but dark people until the invaders came. Okay, it was nothing. The continent, Africa for Africans. The continent was all black people. There were no whites. There were no nothing. When the continent was formed and it was at its height in its lineage, there was nothing. Okay, these people came thousands of years later through evasion. Okay, viewed from a political perspective, someone who is a resident or citizen of a country where Arabic is an official or national language, or is a member of the Arab League, or is part of the wider Arab world, is an Arab. This definition would cover more than 300 million people. Under this definition, there are more Arabs in Africa than anywhere else in the universe. Most of those Arabs that live in Africa are black Africans. You heard me? From Chad, Nigeria, Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Kenya, Tanzania. They say Egypt, but I would like to say Kemet. They say Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco. Many of them trace their ancestry to Yemen. Okay, so now, these places, as I mentioned, they were acculturated, assimilated, amalgamated, as I did the other podcasts, over time. Okay? So, the fact that when you look at these regions and how these regions were influxed with these foreigners, just like you have here in the United States, okay? And you've had this racial intermixing. Once a group comes in to the region, that's the first thing that they may not be the first thing, but eventually that's what usually happens, is we have to lighten up the region, because we came in by force, and we don't belong here anyway. So what we have to do to acculturate and assimilate our genes in this particular region is to begin to, as I read in the other podcast, to do that admixture through intermingling with the populace, you know. So you take on darker women, men take on lighter women, and then before you know it, you got a lot of mulatto people or what have you running around. And this is the danger in acquiring status and keeping status, because people will begin to assimilate what is not theirs and acculturate what is not theirs. Okay, on its formation in 1946, the Arab League defined an Arab as